Hello, in this video we're going to write this function called findMax. So this is a pretty standard process you want to be able to do in any programming language, and that is given a list or some sort of data structure, find the maximum value, however that's defined. We're looking at a list of integers in this case, so the maximum value is pretty obvious in terms of how we define that. Now, the way this has been set up is we have our function here, and then a bunch of test cases down below where we've generated, for example, an increasing sequence, a decreasing sequence, all elements are equal, and some randomized elements. Now, what I want to point out here in Python is that you actually have this really nice function that you can pass a list to called the max function. If I pass the list into max, if I do something like this, that's going to pull out the maximum value from the list. So the problem actually is pretty trivial. Now, if I run this, this isn't going to work properly, and let's just demonstrate that. We see that what's happening is we're printing out none every time. And the reason for that is because I invoke the function, pass it my list, and I'm putting the returned value to result. But since I don't have a return value here, it returns none. Because that's the default with Python. So I'm just going to say return max val, and then I'm done. Sure enough, it works. There we go. Now this is a great way to do it, and I can't say I wouldn't do it this way. But one of the things we want to develop is comfort in traversing a list and trying to evaluate the elements to make a decision. Not all programming languages are going to support a function like this, and it's not always going to be the maximum value we're looking for. So let's look at how we do this using a loop. Before I do that though, I just want to make one last point. Be really careful if you do this. This will actually cause a problem. And what's happened is max is a function that is a standard built-in function in Python. And since I've named my variable max, the compiler is getting confused because it thinks you're actually talking about the variable, not the function. So never call your variable max because you have a function in there called max. In fact, never call a variable the same name as any other function that is pre-built into Python. Okay, so let's look at how we do this. The first thing you do is you're going to define a variable max val. I'm going to set it to 0. Now some of you might already be catching something, and just hold. We're going to circle back to look at what the issue is here. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to write a loop that is going to go through the entire list. Remember, inclusive, exclusive, change. And I'm simply going to say if max val is less than list.i, max val is equal to list.i. And give this a whirl. Sure enough, it works perfectly. Now, this will actually fail in a specific situation. And let's go down and simulate that. So we've set up a bunch of test cases here that look at some of the situations, but they don't consider everything. So let's set up a test case 5 here. All negative values. Now what we see is the maximum values should be -2. That's what we expect here. But let's take a look at what happens when we run it. We get 0. Now why is that? The reason that happens is because I made the assumption at the start of my function that max val is going to be 0. And you know, this works in a lot of the situation as long as you have one positive value in your list. But if all your values are negative, this statement, this max val never gets overwritten. So one way you get around this problem is to set your max val to your first element in your list. And this is actually a really, really powerful technique. If you're ever looking for something, a max or min value in a list, always set the max/min to the first element. This means you don't have to know what the range of values are in the list. You just if the first element happens to be the maximum value, then it won't get shifted out. And if we run this now, sure enough, there it is. One last little point here. We can actually take out this if statement and we can use our handy little max function. And I can just simply say max val is equal to max val, so take the current max val and compare it to the listed I. And this is a nice way to use that built-in max function, and it's a little cleaner in the work. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Have a wonderful day.